Our reflections of a queen. Next month marks the 45th anniversary of ZNS television, the crown jewel of that pivotal moment, the presence of Queen Elizabeth II. The events of that day etched in the hearts and minds of 4 ZNS employees. Carla Palmer has the story.
My name is Eugene Clare.
Charles Russell.
Dawn Cartwright.
My name is Andrew Cumberbatch.
4 different individuals, but each sharing one thing in common, more than just being males. They were all employed by the Broadcasting Corporation when the late Queen Elizabeth II came to the Bahamas to officially commission the country's first national transmission of colored television back in 1977. Now, more than 40 years later, following retirement for each, they returned to ZNS, where each began their careers as somewhat of a memorial tribute in remembrance of the late monarch's visit. As they walk the halls of the corporation, recalling the moments as though they happened yesterday. For Eugene Clare, he says, it was a tremendous time. He was a young engineer, just 24 years old.
As she came to, she was introduced to different individuals. One of the engineers, we call him Smithy, he, instead of him bowing, he curtsied. We took him to war with that. But other than that, it was a really joyful time that she came. It was a real eye-opener for me to know that we can do some things that will get the attention of the world, really. And I think it was a great time to remember in my career, being so close to a head of state, but just to know that she was here with us. That was a great feeling and confidence.
Charles Russell was the youngest employee at the time, hired as a radio production assistant straight out of high school at 18 years old. He worked protocol for ZNS when the late Queen Elizabeth came to observe the momentous occasion, connecting the Bahamas through television with the world.
My duty was on the outside, seating the guests. When she came, she entered the building and toured the facilities and then came back on the outside for the short ceremony. Her grace, her poise, and always smiling. But I was mesmerized by the security of it all. I mean, everything was so detailed, and you had to stay in your position. You couldn't be moving all over the place.
Dawn Cartwright recalls the many meetings in advance of the historic visit. 2 full weeks of preparatory training, he says, and boasts that at 21 years of age, he was in the presence of royalty, in that of the late Queen Elizabeth II. So close he could have touched her, but dared not. He worked in master control at the time. In fact, he and Andrew Cumberbatch were reportedly the 2 persons who literally flipped the switch in the transition from black and white cinematography to colored television.
And I was sitting in the master control at the switcher, and Mr. Johnson was walking the Queen's room, and we had a piece of equipment called the vectorscope. It's an instrument we use to check the with colors, different colors, shading, or when you're adjusting the cameras and stuff like that. So, but he was so excited in showing the Queen, you know, Mr. Johnson, and he was calling it the vectorscope a superscope. So that was a joke from then to now, you know.
To an 18-year-old boy to meet the Queen and coming in, just looking at her and just, that was just an awe. I was an 18-year-old boy. This is the Queen of the world. She smiles at you, and you feel like, hey, she's a grandmother. I don't think she was actually a grandmother at the time, but you just felt the persona, the way she carried herself, and I could see why a lot of world leaders loved her. I still like her to this day.
Now that an era has ended, these men say their memories they intend to hold dear, as it's an historic occasion never to forget. For the Bahamas Tonight, I'm Carla Palmer.